My 6-year-old neighbor was upset that I gifted his sister some handmade products that will inspire her Christmas outfits. Then I promised to make him some things. So after racking my head, scrolling through the internet and all of that, I decided to make him a matching waistcoat and bow tie sets with his grandmother's gele that I have with me. Forgive the rough looking paper, guys, just pay attention to what I'm doing. So I have marked my starting point, which is the center back and the shoulder line. So what I'm basically doing here is just drafting the basic bodice pattern. This is the back, and what I am doing is starting from the foundation, which is the basic bodice pattern. So I can't remember everything that I did entirely. I can't remember the measurement, so please go ahead and watch the Dartless bodice pattern or the one with that, whichever one it is that you want to watch. The only difference is that both of them are basic bodice patterns. So I'm marking my shoulder width and length, so it is 1 inch by 2.5. Now I am marking the shoulder width divided by 2 minus half an inch because this is sleeveless. I'm going to come down a bit and mark it. Then I am going to form a horizontal line, or is it a vertical line? Which one of them? So I heard that when you make clothes for children, you do not add the shoulder slope because they are kids. But I looked at him and I saw that his shoulder is not entirely straight. This man has a slope. He's a boy, but I saw a man with slope. So I decided to go in by half an inch to form the shoulder slope. But then again, I changed my mind. I was like, you know what? I am doing a basic bodice pattern. I don't care if it's an adult or a child. So I went down by 1 inch, which is like the shoulder width divided by 10, in order to form the shoulder slope. Please go watch the basic bodice pattern videos, guys. I can't remember everything that I did. The waistcoat is out of my hands now, and the pattern, I have trashed it. So this is me trying to form the armhole curve. I have marked half of the length. I am going to go in by half an inch. Then I am going to go down to from my chest line, the chest line. So for men or for boys, it's not called bust line because they do not have bust, so it's called chest line. Now guys, at this point I failed to add half an inch for ease. I did not do that, and when I was forming the pattern, the side seam, I was like, this thing doesn't look right. What is wrong? Okay, so it turned out that I did not add half an inch for ease at the chest line. So this is my armhole curved, formed, and ready to go. Then I am going to go ahead to mark the chest. I'm struggling here, guys. I'm going to go ahead and mark the shoulder to waist. That is what I was trying to remember. Shoulder to waist measurement. So after marking shoulder to waist, I am also going to go down and mark shoulder to hem. I am just going to mark the length of the entire waistcoat. I should call it vest. Vest is easier. I am going to go ahead to mark the length of the entire vest, which is 14 inches. So now I have the shoulder line, chest line, waistline, and the length marked. If you're new here, do not forget to subscribe and join the DIY family. My name is Juliet. Welcome to DIY with Juliet. Now guys, self-doubt is a very terrible thing. Guys, so let me just gist you all. After I finished working on the pattern, that was this exact perfect pattern. So on the waistline, I'm just marking waist circumference divided by 4 plus 0.5 inches. I used the original waist because the chest line is 6 inches and the waistline is 5.75, so I decided to use the original thing. Now guys, after I finished drafting the pattern, I decided to make a prototype so that I could wear and everything, because it was gele. I was using gele, and gele has no stretch to it at all. Okay, so I decided, okay, I should do a prototype. Let me just tell you all at this point. This is where I forgot to mark the chest circumference, and I noticed that I didn't have an inch marked, and I had to go in to correct. So I marked 6 inches at the chest, 6 inches at the M, and I used 5.75 for the waist, and I connected it. So I made a prototype. Back to the story, I made a prototype, and it was paper, so it started to tear. And I felt, okay, maybe the pattern is way too tight for him. But at the end of the day, a waistcoat is not supposed to be big. A waistcoat is supposed to be fitted, right? And again, what made me doubt is that I am using gele, and gele has no stretch to it at all. What if I finish making this thing and it ended up being too tight for him? I don't want to make this thing and he's not going to be able to wear it. He was upset, although he didn't come to me directly to tell me he was upset about the fact that I gave his sister a gift. His auntie came to tell me. So I was like, okay, now let me promise. And I'm a kind of person that when I make a promise, I like to keep my promise. I don't want to be the auntie Agbaya in the compound. So I made the prototype and I was like, okay, maybe the pattern is wrong. Let me add half an inch. Half an inch in some areas, not everything entirely. So I added the half an inch everywhere I wanted to add it. And guys, it was his exact size and more. I didn't want him to wear it in front of me, but his auntie made him wear it in front of me, and I saw that it was his exact size and more. It is not all bad. Thank God that I added the ties at the back. So this is my back bodice pattern, guys. Let us go over and drop the front. We'll get back to the story later, okay? So this, my starting point, marks. I have my chest line, my center front, shoulder line, waistline, M, all marked. Ready to go, ready to work with. Now at the M, I am going to go down by 1.5 inches because the M have those pointy ends. So I'm going to go down by 1.5 inches. Then after that, I am going to add 1 inch for my button area. Back to the story. I didn't want him to wear it in front of me because I didn't want to see that it's not going to be his exact size and I'm going to adjust some things. I was too tired. I didn't want to adjust anything. I didn't want him to make him feel bad. But at the end of the day, it was his size and more. I loved it. I loved it. Everybody loved it. Now that that is marked, the next thing I am doing is drafting my basic bodice pattern, everything that I did for the front. So I'm marking the same neck width, but I did not mark neck depth. Marked the, what do they call it, shoulder minus half an inch, then the shoulder slope, the chest line, trying to make sure everything corresponds with what is already at the back. The waist circumference, chest circumference, and M, everything all marked. Then mark the M, you are going to find out. This is my final sewing project for 2023, guys. It is the end of the year. It is the end of another year. I was not able to keep up with all of my sewing projects, but yeah, I did some things, and thank you all so much for sticking with me. To form my neck depth for the front, on the chest line, I am going to go upwards by half an inch. Now where we are going upwards is not the initial line. We are going upwards. We are marking that at the 1 inch extension that we made for buttons, and I am going to connect that to the neck width. Now you can decide to use your curved ruler to do this. I initially went in with the straight ruler, but later on I changed it to the curved ruler because my boy deserves some curve. Now guys, also at the M, the initial M, I am going to go upwards by half an inch, okay? So I'm not marking it on the M that we marked as the extension. On the initial M, I went upwards by half an inch. Now for the M, I am going to find out the width of the M, the entire M, the width, and I'm going to divide that by 3 because at this point we are starting to get that pointy curve that we had at, what's my problem? So divided by 3, and I am going to mark that from the center front inwards, okay? I'm going to mark that from the points where we have the extension, the button extension, towards the side seam, and I'm going to connect that to the first point that I marked, okay? I don't know if you guys understand. Now for the side front, I am going to mark the M to the waist. I am going to measure what we have from the M to the waist, and I am going to divide that by 3 again. Okay, so I was confused. 5.5, 5.6. At the end of the day, it gave me almost the same thing. So from the M upwards towards the waist, I am going to mark the measurements that we had, and I rounded up to 2 inches. So I am going to use my curved ruler to connect to the points like so. So now we have that pointy mark that, you know, our vest has come to life. I added my half-inch seam allowance, which I should have left as it is. So this is my front and back bodice pattern, ready and good to go. But I had to make one correction, which was to correct the length. The length of the front is shorter than the back because obviously we had to curve it in order to form the vest looking thing. So I had to correct it to make sure that both the M at the front and the back corresponds. Now when I marked it, I observed that the measurement for the front is almost close to the initial M I had for the back. So I didn't use the front measurements, I just cut out the seam allowance at the M. Okay, and I was like, I'm going to adjust it later on when I am making the vest, but this is what it looks like after I removed the seam allowance at the M. So guys, prototype. This is the prototype I made with paper, and you can see the tear when it's there to words. And because of that, I decided to add half an inch almost everywhere except for the chest area and the shoulder. For the back too, I did the same. As you can see, I added half inch at the M, the side, and also the center. So for the front, we need 2 pieces, and for the back, we need 1 piece cut on the fold. Okay, and for the lining panel, the same exact thing. So I cut out 4 pieces of gilly, and the 4 pieces is 2 inches by 12 inches, and that will serve as the tie at the back. Thank God I added the ties. So this is my lining panel, the same thing as the main panel. Ladies and gentlemen, let us start sewing. So now I am going to place my ties right sides touching, and I am going to sew on only 3 corners. I am going to leave an opening at one short end so I can turn to the right side later. And I'm going to place my main panel right sides touching, and I am going to sew at the shoulders only. I am going to repeat to the lining. So these are my ties, ready and good to go. And this is my main panel sewn at the shoulder. Lining panel is also sewn at the shoulder. As you can see, I pressed my seam allowance open because it is a must for us. So now it is time for me to fix my ties at the back. So in order to get the measurements, I marked 4 inches from the M and also 4 inches from the side. Now after I marked 4 inches at the M and the side, I also marked half an inch on the raw edges, okay, on the opening. Okay, so where we have that opening, I marked half an inch inwards. So I am going to place the half an inch so that it corresponds with the mark that I have on the main back, and I am going to stitch that down. Now after stitching that down, I am going to flip the ties so that it is inwards. As you can see, I also added fusible fleece in that to serve as a facing so that the stitch has something to land on and it gives that particular area some body. So I'm going to flip like so, flip the ties, and I am going to stitch that down. That was all I did for the ties. I didn't make it adjustable because I didn't have any of those hardware. After that, I felt like the ties are too far apart. The space in between was too much, but at the end of the day, it is fine. So here I have gone ahead to place my main panel and lining panel right sides touching, and I used all my pins in order to pin this down. So main panel and lining panel right sides touching, I am going to stitch at both the armhole Then from the front, I am going to stitch from the hem all the way to the neckline down to the other hem, and I am going to stitch the back hem. I am not stitching the sides, both at the back and at the front. I am not stitching the sides, so all the 4 sides have opening. So this is it, done and ready to go. I am going to snip my curves and I am going to reduce my seam allowance. Also, do not forget to notch the corners so they are sharp and crisp. Now it's time for me to flip my vest to the right side. So I'm going to put my hand in from the back opening, one of the back opening, and I'm going to pass my hand through the shoulder. But my hand can't go all the way through, so I'm just going to push the front panel in till I grab it and pull it out. Now I am going to repeat the same to the other side. So guys, this is it, turned and ready to go. At this point, we are pressing. Guys, I never knew that gilly was difficult to work with until I made this vest. I've always looked at gilly like it would be simple to sew and everything and all of that. But when I made this vest, I realized gilly is a difficult fabric to work with. But at the end of the day, it is not all bad. I really enjoyed working with the fabric. It does not fray and it is easy to cut. So guys, now it's time for us to finish or close the side seams. But how do we close the side seams so that the raw edges doesn't show inside? I am going to show you. So first off, I am going to place the main panel right sides touching. I am going to place them in such a way that the armhole area or the armpit area, the seams at the armpit area align, and also the seams at the hem align. Okay, so we are not pinning the lining panel yet. We are pinning only the main panels, and we are making sure that those seams that we have at the top and at the bottom, that they align. I just want to quickly let you all know that I am going to be changing my thumbnail style next year in 2024. So if you see a new thumbnail, no shaking, that's still me. Now that I'm done with that, let us move on to the next step. So on the other opening, I am going to put my hands in and I am going to grab the main panel alone and I am going to pull it so that it comes out of the other side. Okay, so if you are using Ankara fabric or cotton fabric or any other fabric, it will be easier, but because I use gilly, it is stiffer. So now we have a round circle to work with. So now I am going to go ahead to pin the lining panel and I am going to sew my circle entirely shut. Okay, so after sewing, this is what we have. I am going to trim my seam allowance and snip the curve, and I am going to pull it out so our lining is neat. One thing I like about this vest is the neatness. Outside, inside, both neat. I really love it. So it's time for me to close the other side. So I am going to do the same thing that I did to the first side. I am going to align the seams at the armpit area and also the hem. But the tricky part about this one is that we have no opening to pull it out of, so we have no circle to work with. So what I'm going to do, if you're using fabric cotton, this would be easier. So what I am going to do first is that I am going to pin. So after pinning the main panels, I am going to go ahead to pin the lining to some point. Now I'm going to pin the lining both at the hem area, below the hem area, and above the armpit area, so that when we sew, we will start sewing and stop sewing at the lining panel, because at this point we are going to have an opening and we are going to close it, and our closing will be visible and it is supposed to be at the lining panel. If you have your opening at the main panel, which means that you started and stopped sewing at the main panel, your opening is going to show. Now from my opening, I have decided to stitch it with my sewing machine, but you can decide to use your hand and do a blind stitch so that your stitch can be invisible. But for me, I am going to use my sewing machine. So this is it. My opening is closed and it is neat. I love it. So what I noticed is that because this is gilly, I feel like the the lining is going to roll up, so I decided to top stitch all around. So I top stitched the entire thing, both at the armhole area and everything, just to keep the lining panel from rolling. After that, I added my buttons. I miscalculated and the last button was not properly placed, but at this point I am tired. And I also made a matching bow tie, and I used my bra. I used an old bra strap as the tie for the bow tie because I was too lazy to make ties from scratch. And this is the final thing. Do let me know what you think in the comment section. Happy holidays. This is my final project for the year. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Thank you for joining me.